Hi, friends. This is the part where I become your teacher and say, please quiet down because the panel's about to start. Welcome to Popversus Marvel vs. DC! But we're doing Marvel versus DC, so I don't want no comments about a galaxy far, far away or living long and prosper. Let's get that out of the way. Right to start, you leave. How dare you wish us happiness and glory. My name is Ashley Victoria Robinson. I am the video host and producer in the Popverse. We are the media wing of Read Pop, the lovely folks who put this whole event on for you. And I said, today we're choosing violence, and we're going to fight. So we have asked a titan of Marvel and a titan of DC, who have definitely never played in the other camp whatsoever, to come and help us along on this discussion today. So because you gave me, frankly, too quiet an applause and not enough cheers, I'm gonna need you to be a lot louder for Marc Guggenheim and Fabien Nicieza! Yes, I said, can I be a horrible white lady?
0.01% didn't forget how to pronounce.
But this is my pro tip. If you're ever talking to someone you don't know how to pronounce their name, just ask them. Just be like a nice person, it's not a big deal. This is going to be a participatory panel, so work up your courage, work on your diaphragm support, because about halfway through, I'm going to throw to all of you and let you come into the bloodbath. If we're not all bleeding arterial blood by the end of this, we haven't done this panel right, frankly. So, Marc and Fabien, can we start the violence?
Start the violence.
So, Marc, what makes DC DC?
Ooh, good question. I would say honestly, like, it's the characters, and those characters, they, first of all, they're more powerful. They are. I mean, they're basically like God, and they're more powerful. And with the exception of like Batman, they're more brighter in aspiration.
Just give Batman an hour and he'll beat anyone.
That's what makes DC. That to me is what makes DC DC. The characters, both their tone and their unbelievably unstoppable abilities.
Okay, so Fabien, what makes Marvel Marvel? Now piss the other half of the room off for me, please.
I'm going to give the ridiculously boring academic answer. Okay, sorry. What makes Marvel Marvel is that they were not DC. And that's not in any way, shape, or form slander. DC was built and predicated in the 50s and early 60s on an authoritarian, good guy model. So all of the characters that came through the 50s when Julie Schwartz and everybody was reinventing them with Gardner Fox were airplane pilots and police commissioners, and they were all noble jobs that we all respected in the 50s. I think that maybe when America was great again, I'm not sure. I've yet to be given a date. Marvel went the opposite direction because they knew they had to. So they were, in essence, not necessarily anti-authoritarian, because you wouldn't call Reed Richards anti-authoritarian until you take into account that he stole his own rocket ship from his own company or whatever and flew it, right? But what they were characters who made mistakes, had feet of clay, and often failed as much as they succeeded. DC characters didn't fail back then. All right, they solved the end of the story by the end of the story. Marvel characters had continued stories where because they failed, it had to be continued. Part of that was due to the process, the way Stan Lee worked and had to work. Another part of it is that they quickly realized they found a formula that was succeeding for them, and it was different than DC's formula. And DC stuck with that formula until the late 60s, early 70s, where they tried to be more like Marvel. So in essence, that's the foundation of all of the differences between the way that the books were developed.
I'm really glad that we got the answer about authoritarianism right off the bat, so that we can then move on to misogyny and racism and structural oppression before the end of this panel today.
I think they're all good at that.
How can we get canceled by the end of this panel?
Exactly. What's everybody's Twitter handle? Where can you follow us all online? It's okay. If you hate this panel and the end of the show survey, my name is Ashley. You can blame me for all of this. I'll take that on. on. Okay, so Fabian, I'm gonna start with you again. Again? No, for the first time. Take two. Fabian, now we're gonna start with you. What do you love about working for Marvel?
It's I don't know how to answer. I've been working. Next year, August marks my 40th year in the industry.
We didn't take seconds.
I started a job at Marvel Comics in August of 1985, and I was Marvel's advertising manager on staff. Before I was a writer, my job was to promote.
Okay, Brad, you have real skills.
It's actually what I actually got to use my college major in a job. Go figure. My college major was communications, and my father was like. And then 2 years out of college, after I was at Berkeley Publishing for a couple years, I became Marvel's advertising manager, and my dad was like, "I knew you would do it." My experience with Marvel is very different than the average writer you might talk to now, and especially the subsequent generations of writers, because I was on staff, so I was there every day, and it was an office job for me, and the people who worked there were my friends and my coworkers, and we had a very different perspective on the whole thing than you do when you're on the outside.
Yeah.
And as a freelancer, because I've been a freelancer for years too, I
10 to
have a very
9.
different perspective on Marvel now than I did then. So while I was working there, it was one of the most fun places in the world you can imagine working at. It's not now, but it was then. And DC was the boring place. And I say that because it was the boring place. DC was much more buttoned up in corporate because they were owned by Warner. So when I would go visit friends at DC, you had to sit quietly in the offices. Whereas at Marvel, people, they're throwing fishing lines out the window to try to get people to pick up fake dollar bills 4 stories down. I'm not kidding. You had editors who had built elevated desks and taken the legs off couches so that the freelancers would sink and have to be looking up at the editors who were on their desks. That's all Mark Gordon Walton, God bless him. So it was just a very different place. So I don't know as much about what the offices are like now because I don't go to them, but I will tell you Marvel versus DC, not a single person on the planet Earth wouldn't have preferred to work at Marvel just because it was fun every single day in the middle of the angst and pressure of putting out monthly publications.
Yeah, DC was classical music and Marvel was punk rock.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
All right, Mark, go on.
I like punk rock.
Well, I gotta be honest. The thing I love about working for DC is honestly the same answer as if you ask me what's the thing I love about Marvel. It's the people. I mean, honestly, like some of the best people I know I've met through comics, specifically at DC and Marvel. So. I will say, so the best part about working in DC though, unfortunately this is gone, like so many good things go away, but when we were doing the Arrowverse shows, our offices were basically across the street from DC's offices in Burbank. And first of all, the DC offices at Burbank were amazing. I mean, they were like, it looked like you were stepping onto the set of a science fiction movie. It's like, there's all this like translucent glass and like, the conference rooms, they had windows, surrounded by windows, and you would press a button and the windows would frost like you were in the CIA. But there was the consumer products room. This is back when DC Direct existed. And you could just go in there and it was like, they had one of everything. And you could just take what you wanted, and it was glorious.
What have you taken from that room?
The thing I took the most, I really loved the Batman black and white statuette series that they did, and I would just always go, like take these. And actually, in my home office in Los Angeles, I've got like sort of a library, floor to ceiling shelves, and across one row is just all black and white statues of Batman that really just make me happy every time I'm like looking up from my keyboard, like, oh, that's cool. Those were the days.
Okay, one more follow-up. Which black and white statue is your favorite? Mine is the Tim Sale one.
Mike Mignola, not even question. Mike Mignola, all the way.
Nice.
I will say the Frank Miller Dark Knight one is really, really good too, but there's something about seeing Mignola's style, 3D representation that just makes me happy.
Okay, this might take a little bit of thought, so whoever wants to answer first, I will allow it. which character from your team would be better in the other universe and why? So which DC character would be better in the Marvel universe and which Marvel character would be better in the DC universe?
Marvel character would be better in the DC universe is Quasar because Mark Grunwald basically was doing his love of 60s Green Lantern. So Quasar was already a DC character in the Marvel universe. We used to make fun of Mark every day about it. So Quasar would be the one I would shift over to DC.
That's
Nice.
Can I pick? Well,
You
I
can
would
pick
say,
one more.
yeah. Off the top of my head, of course, I go Batman.
Yeah.
You know, I do want to pick one from Marvel to go over to DC, which I think Captain America. He's so bright and cheerful, and he's got that DC sort of pluck. You know.
Put him in the absolute right now with the darkest stories that DC is telling.
Well, I do have this take. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but I got a take where. On Captain America, where the shield is actually like his emblem. And
that'd be great, yeah.
He takes the shield off his chest and puts it on a stick, and it becomes this really big lollipop.
That's good.
And, yeah, don't steal this idea from me. This is my moment to shine.
So is the shield going to stay the same size, Mark, in your idea?
Yes,
Or you're
of
gonna have to
course.
shrink it a
No,
bit?
no, because he's getting bigger.
Oh,
Have you seen
I didn't think I don't get
Yeah.
kids
No,
today
no,
in
he's
comic
huge.
books.
Did you say
I didn't
kids
think
these
of making
Yes.
Captain America
Oh,
bigger.
no, of course, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, not even a question.
Okay, so returning back to our respective camps, who is the most?
I feel you're pigeonholing us, actually.
Okay, so in the world of Star Wars, can you believe that they only made 3 Star Wars movies and they never made any more?
Yes. And for me, they only made 2 Star Wars movies, so
DC versus Marvel, who published the better Star Trek comic? And, well, tell me, who published the better Star Trek comic and why is it DC?
You're not going to get any argument from me.
I know.
But all the people who love Starfleet Academy are like, oh no. Or we could do the Star Trek, or we could say, why is Lower Decks the best new Star Trek series? Not as big a reaction. Shame on all of you. You need to watch Lower Decks. It's a great show. This guy keeps like the long and salute. Who is the most Marvel character, and who's the most DC character?
Well, I mean, it's the low-hanging fruit answers, right? I mean, I gotta go with Superman for DC.
And Spider-Man from Marvel.
Because the truth is also everything we were talking about in the first question
Yeah.
is really encapsulated in that answer, right?
Yes.
I mean, Superman and Spider-Man the most quintessential representations of the respective companies.
I so badly want to ask you who is the worst representation of those companies, but we're trying to be positive and celebratory. We don't punch down, because also every character is somebody's favorite character, and we all know what it's like to have someone be like, "You like Nightcrawler? That's wrong." And then I'm like, "Well, now we're fighting." I joked about fighting her.
By the way, it's kind of amazing that we've had this conversation for several minutes now, and we haven't brought up things like Squadron Supreme.
Yeah.
Well, Sugar and Spike was named in the email, and I'm surprised
Yes.
that hasn't come up yet.
I'm waiting for Fabian to bring it up because that's.
It comes down to who's the last person left fighting Darkseid.
I love it.
If it's Sugar and Spike, but they're on the same universe. See, I'm all confused because I like them both, and I always have since I was a kid. Go figure.
Wait, we can be by comic.
We can be by comics. We can.
Wait, then, Mark, who are the last DC characters alive fighting Thanos? Let's say we're the Sugar and Spike of it all.
You know what? Okay, I gotta go with Ambush Bug.
Yeah.
Ambush Bug is basically he is the Deadpool of the DC universe.
Yeah.
And he was Deadpool before there was a Deadpool.
There he is.
And Ambush
Fabian, how do you feel about
He's
that?
among the 50 characters that we copied, I heard.
I mean, I love Ambush Bug. I've got nothing but great love. And I hope that what I really want to see is I want to see them do an Ambush Bug movie. James Gunn, if you're listening, an Ambush Bug movie starring Ryan Reynolds.
Ooh, okay, so.
But I don't think Ryan Reynolds will touch the DC universe with a 10-foot pole. I had absolutely nothing to do with that.
Wait, but is James Gunn the person that we all need to like send strongly worded emails to about the Sandwich Book movie?
I just like the idea of sending James Gunn strongly worded emails. So yes.
Okay, well I'll find his email, which I'm sure is super easy to do, and say, please let Mark do the image.
James.Gunn@DCstudios.
No, you know it's gotta be like at yahoo.com or something hilarious like that, and he's had it.
Knowing Warner Brothers, it's at AOL.com.
Okay, friends, we're gonna ask one more question and then I'm gonna throw it all over to you. So get emotionally prepared to speak in a room full of everybody who feels the exact same way that you do. While I ask if you had, because again, we've never swapped over to the other side. Never once, not for a single second. Mark, if you had to work on a Marvel character, whomst would it be?
Well, I really, it's easy, Daredevil. I used to be a lawyer, so I gotta do Daredevil. Like, one of these, I've done issues of Daredevil, like here and there, little stories, but Marvel, if you're listening, Daredevil.
Fabian, if you had to go over to DC.
I already did go over.
No, but if you've never done it, you're fighting for Marvel.
I would turn back time, make New 52 never have happened, and I get to keep writing Red Robin for 100 years.
Okay, who wants to be very brave and ask the first question? I'm gonna prompt you. You gotta tell me your name, if you're Team Marvel or Team DC, even though we're all Team Everything, and then ask your question. This brave fellow over here.
Thank you, yeah. Charles, I'm Team DC. One non-conventional question. Which character from DC or Marvel would you want to roommate with?
Ooh, which character from Marvel or DC would you want as your roommate? That's a good question.
Well, I can't say Ambush, but Alfred Pennyworth.
Aunt May.
Really like wheat cakes
every day. Oh, Peter.
All right, who else has a question? Friend with a nice tie and a blue shirt.
Why are there significantly more smart people in the Marvel universe than DC?
That's so rude. Why are there significantly more smart people in the Marvel universe than the DC universe?
My answer probably would be because Stan had a little bit of a messiah complex. After decades of working in an industry that was belittled, he wanted to write about powerful people who had feet of clay, right? So he made everybody smart.
Mark, why is everyone in DC stupid?
That's a good question. I think it has less to do with the people writing them. It's funny. Like I was thinking, like in DC, the citizens of the DC universe elected Lex Luthor to be president. As we know, that would never happen in real life. But it doesn't say much for the intellect of the denizens of the DC universe.
Well, did Marvel make Kingpin the mayor of New York?
Yes, that's true. So that's true.
On a smaller scale,
Marvel
yes. Are just as stupid as DC.
I love that we concluded that everybody's stupid. Who has the next question? Nice friend all the way at the back.
I'm curious, how many Hyperions do you think it would take to defeat Superman?
How many Hyperions to defeat Superman? You guys came prepped. I love this about you.
And I'm going to give you the worst answer in the world because it's the answer I always give. However many Hyperions the writer decides they need.
That is a very writerly
How many
answer.
Hyperions does it take to screw in a light bulb?
That is a whole other question. How many Hyperions are there, by the way? Can someone tell me? Because I don't keep track.
It's like Duncan, Idaho in June. There's just a million. That's where all the.
I love a good light bulb joke.
Wolverine, what's your question?
Could Batman defeat anyone with prep time?
Could Batman defeat anyone with prep time? The classic question.
No. Not even with the big axe.
I actually have a lot of fun dealing with the Batman needs just an hour to prep people. Because I came to this country and the first thing I really glommed onto was the Batman TV show. And in that, there were these pudgy little guys with little cat caps and striped shirts who were able to hit Batman from behind and knock him out. So as a 6-year-old, I figured, oh, I guess you can get the drop on Batman. But man-boy adults now can't understand that and accept that in their lives.
So what you're saying is you want everyone to come find you at Arts Alley and argue about this.
I would love it, actually. The bigger the crowd, the more the fun.
My Star Trek friend right here.
Swap Batman and Spider-Man's villains. Who would do better?
Ooh, if Batman and Spider-Man swap villains, who would do better?
That's a great question, and also really different villains, but for different reasons.
I think Batman does much better. I think the moment Peter gets in front of the Joker, it's game over. Oh, I can't hit
Oh no,
this
absolutely.
guy.
If Batman had an hour to prep, he'd be
Oh, well.
I still haven't yet to figure out how any of them would be able to beat Sandman. I just don't get that. I wrote Sandman in like 2 Issues of Thunderbolts. I'm like, he should win every fight.
Yeah.
You're gonna wake up tomorrow morning to an editor email saying, would you like to tell us a story about how Batman defeats Sandman? Nice friend over here. What's your question?
Hi, Michael. Would you rather be in a world where, TBC, would you rather be in a world where Lex Luthor is president or Norman Osborn is president?
Do you want to live in a world where Lex Luthor or Norman Osborn is president? How quickly do you want to flee these United States?
I lived in a world where both were president.
I want to live in a world where Kamala Harris is president.
And I'm not kidding, we've lived in that world.
We have.
Not to
Right.
belabor the point, but please everybody go out and vote. It's coming November. Nice friend in the yellow sweater.
How do you feel for DC reusing the same 10 heroes in just increasingly darker scenarios?
How do you feel about DC reusing the same heroes in increasingly darker scenarios?
You mean in comics or in, shall we say, other medium?
Other media.
Mark, this is your fault.
Oh God, yeah. Really. Well, I'm part of the problem. You know, that's a good question. I don't feel great about it, to be honest with you. I'm not a fan. I mean, despite my work on Arrow, I am, believe it or not a fan of the darkening of the DC universe. Like I said, to me, the DC universe is all about hope and light and a bright, future. So. Like, honestly, I just want, like, a Superman movie where Superman's not killing people, But I will tell you, hit straight up. So, like, when I was actually in a room with the head of Warner Brothers at the time, and this is before Man of Steel came out, and he's like, this head of the studio's like, I don't understand any of these characters except for Batman. And when I'm watching Man of Steel, I'm like, yeah, this is all tracking. Like, this is all, and honestly, what it comes down to is Warner Brothers has to embrace what they have. For too long, and I hope it changes with Mr. Gunn, but for too long, I've always said Warner Brothers owning a comic book company is like PETA owning a Burger King franchise. And that darkening you're talking about that's not darkening them in their minds. It's like, how do we make these characters cool? And if you come to this, whole endeavor with how do we make these characters cool instead of how do we take these cool characters and not screw them up, you're doing something wrong.
But, and yes, to everything you said, but we're also to blame first.
Yeah.
We did it first. They're following the lead we gave them and the examples we gave them, because starting in the 80s, the only cool thing to do was to make your character darker, edgier, and the next generation following suit thought they had to make it darker and edgier than Frank Miller and Alan Moore, who both understood the character's core and was telling Elseworld stories about them, and then it became the mainstream, and then the next generation. So subsequently, every rollover, they just make the mistake of thinking they have to top what was done before. So Hollywood just basically drew from what we were doing and giving to them.
Can you believe that little baby at the back agreed with that? They know what's up. Nice friend about the glasses and the gray sleeve. Which is your favorite verse of the Marvel Unit verse?
My favorite verse of the Marvel Universe is the one I read from 1967 until around 1994. That's my favorite time because that's when I was a kid growing up reading the comics, and that's when I entered the industry and started writing them. I am bored beyond tears by all the multiverses and all the everything. I blame Chris Claremont for having done Days of Future Past so brilliantly. It made idiots like me want to do Forever Yesterday and New Warriors and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The proliferation of it, to me, has gone beyond stupidity and boredom. So I'm bored by all of it. I have almost slept through the Deadpool parts that were multiverse things, and I just focused on the two of them together, acting their asses off with each other. That's what I cared about more in that movie.
It's a 10-minute long movie in Fabian's experience.
There is a nice young man right here with his hand up. It's been up for a minute. What's your question? With Thor beats Superman in a battle. My friend, you have some old crossover comics to read.
Well, if Thor had an hour to prepare.
Whoever the writer wants will win the fight if the writer does their job well.
That's the very boring answer is because the script said so. Oh boy, there's so many more hands now. I can't keep track. Nice friend in the red striped shirt.
So Spider-Man was New York. Superman was Metropolis. Is it better or worse to write a fictional city?
Ooh, is it better or worse to write a real city or a fictional city?
I prefer real cities, and I will say, like, one of the things I love about Marvel Comics is, am I allowed to say?
Sure.
One thing I love about Marvel is that back, especially back in the early days of Marvel, like Stan and Company made New York a character in the books. New York felt like this very vibrant, very New York place. I grew up in New York, so it was New York, but it was like New York on steroids, and with these incredible things that could happen right outside your window. And I don't know, I kind of dig that in a way that Metropolis or Gotham, as cool as those are, like doesn't resonate as much for me.
I side Marvel because trying to find an accurate reference map for DC cities that is consistent when I was writing for DC for years was impossible and exhausting so how do I write Tim Drake in Gotham when Gotham seems to change its configurations and its names every 5 minutes, so I couldn't keep track of it.
Okay, so we don't want to do the is Gotham or Metropolis actually New York City debate, and which one is Chicago? See, everyone has an opinion. Friend in the blue sweater right here. Yes, you.
Alright, my name is Sasha, I'm on Team Marvel, and I just like to wonder, what was it like working with Epic Games in 2021?
Ooh, we got a real journalistic question. What was it like working with Epic Games
When did I work with Epic?
in 2021, as specifically stated by Sasha?
I don't.
Which of us did that?
Which of us did that?
What? We
Both of
did.
you did it some way.
Okay, so
What do you imagine it was
the
like?
NDAs that they had us sign is so good, they actually went and blacked Bernie
I was
sorry,
Microsoft
Sasha.
on Halo. I worked for
Yeah, we
Activision
both done
on
video
Splinter
games.
Cell. I worked on what's the stupid racing one? I worked on that one. I never worked on a superhero game.
Sasha, I think you're thinking of more talented writers.
Yeah.
Nice man in the green beside Nightwing.
Hi, Marvel. So, which do you think, as writers with respect to companies, which company has more editorial, studio, whatever, overhead?
Ooh.
Okay, let me rephrase. Which company do you not want to work for?
Yeah. Editorial oversight.
I've already got myself into enough trouble with Warner Brothers, I think, this afternoon.
No, honestly, the answer, having done it for so long for both of them, it really becomes a case-by-case creators differently. And different editorial, so they work editorial office down to creators in their own individual ways, but those same offices work up in their own ways too. They handle internal politics better. So it's a matter of finding the right ones. 9 times out of 10, you don't know which ones are the right ones or the wrong ones until you're smack dab in the middle of it, right? So you can be in the middle of it, it's going well, and going, oh, these editors are good, they're handling it. And you can be in the middle of it, it sucks, and you go, they're clueless, they're useless, you know? So for me, it's not a company by company thing, it's an office by office thing. I haven't worked for DC in quite a while, several years now, and it was an absolute chaotic mess for me to work for them when I was under contract for them during the Grant Morrison Batman days, and then certainly through New 52. See the way that I am.
We don't know her.
But for the same token, now working for Marvel, whenever they offer me a story that interests me and I do it, is perpetually a nightmare because their editors are so overloaded and overwhelmed by the amount of work they have to do in comparison to what editorial offices were like 30 years ago, that it's very difficult for them to maintain the schedule to the needs of the freelancer rather than to the needs of the fires they have to put out. So my answer to that is they both kind of suck.
I will say,
burn an additional bridge.
well, I will say this, like, Fabian is actually putting his finger on something that I think is very real at both the two big companies, which is neither one of the companies is employing enough editors to keep those editors' lives like sane and healthy with a healthy work-life balance. I would really like to see both companies give the editors the help that they need, because you've got a lot of really smart, men and women who are stretched very, very, very thin. I always feel bad for them.
Here's a thought too, if you want to work in comics and you're not sure what you want to do, become an editor, because a good editor is worth their weight in gold.
I totally agree. In fact, it's funny, at this con, I've actually met 2 editors who actually went to school to become editors. I'm like, wow, the world has changed so much. But, and actually, one was at DC and one was at Marvel.
Who seemed happier?
They both seemed equally happy. They both seemed equally happy.
Nice friend in the Batman hat.
Oh, thank you. Robert, Team DC. Given that so many DC movies are hit and miss over the last 20 years,
I have no idea what you're talking about.
why historically has DC been so much more successful in TV projects, whether Arrowverse, whether animated, and they can't get together?
Yeah, Mark.
Why is he better at TV? It's because Marc Guggenheim went over and worked on DC TV and read
I work with a lot of really, really talented people. I will say this. I think, to me, it's a very, very simple calculus. If you like and are a fan of these heroes, again, if you think they're already cool as opposed to how do I make them cool, you're going to have success. It's the people who are like, I'm coming in, I'm not really a comic book fan, I know better. That's usually where the wheels, really fall off the wagon on both sides. Kevin Feige he's a brilliant producer, he's obviously a brilliant creative force, but first and foremost, he loves Marvel Comics. He loves that universe, and it shows. And I really do, and with the Arrowverse shows, we all approached it as fans first. And I think the proof is in the pudding. I think it comes out that way. And if you start with, this doesn't sound so treacly, but if you start with love and you start with respect, you're going to end up with a better product. 9 times out of 10.
Nice friend in the front. He's been very patient.
Ryan, Team DC. Adam versus Ant-Man, why is Adam the better superhero?
Adam versus Ant-Man, why is Adam the better super? I think the answer is also which Adam and which Ant-Man.
Adam's just cooler. He got his powers in a cooler way, and he did more cool things with it from the very beginning. He traveling through time, for crying out loud. Ant-Man was trying to get a sewing hook over the table. From the very beginning, from a very conceptual level, Adam was always more of a science fiction exploration character. Ant-Man, his very first story was a guy who accidentally shrinks himself and has to try to survive just grass and bugs, So they're just conceptually, they were 2 very different things. I love Ray Palmer, Ant-Man, and Adam. I always wanted to write a chance to write that character. So I think that's why.
Okay, so DC, if you're listening.
Why is he cooler? Because he just is cooler.
Mark, thoughts?
hard. I can't really top that. I will say this. Okay, so I'm gonna take this question as an opportunity to embarrass Fabian. So the truth is, like, which character is better? It really has very little to do with the character, and really has everything to do with the execution. I was actually talking, I'm totally embarrassed Fabian here, I was talking to a bunch of Marvel folk the other day at the con, and we were all talking about a series that Fabian wrote in the early 90s called New Warriors. Now, New Warriors, yeah, give it up for New Warriors. So the thing about New Warriors is, on paper, it is the worst idea for a comic book team with the worst name ever. It's just terrible. And like Speedball.
I got a list of names I tried to change.
Oh really? Oh, I want to hear that. I mean, it's not the Warriors is so bad, but what's new about them? Anyway, and everyone at Marvel, and I was interning at Marvel at the time, so I can speak, personally to this. Everyone at Marvel was like, this is the worst idea ever. It's never going to go anywhere. And Fabian and Mark Bagley, his artist, turned it into probably Marvel's best book at the time. And it made this book that should have been like 4 and out, like a huge, massive hit that people still remember to this very day. So again, it's not about the characters often, it's about the execution. It's like, do you have people, whether it's TV, movies, or comics, taking those characters and treating them in a way that is compelling and interesting with drama? I mean, there was some phenomenal storylines that you did on New Warriors.
I appreciate it. In Inside Baseball, I was Marvel's advertising manager, so I had to come up with the ads for my own book that I was writing.
Oh, and you're like, how do I sell this?
The copy line I tried to get them to go with first was, "It ain't gonna suck like you thought it was gonna." That would have been your boss. My boss said, "You can't do that." I go, "But it's the truth."
That would have been true.
No, you can't. I would go to distributor meetings or retailer meetings, and the vice president of sales at Marvel, who passed away in the 90s, Carol Kalish, she's a brilliant woman, and she did a hell of a lot for the industry, but she didn't do a hell of a lot for New Warriors. She'd be at distributor meetings making fun of it, going, "It's like Police Academy with the Avengers. It's like Avengers Academy." And I couldn't say no to her when I'm on stage with her while she's doing a retail thing. So in pockets afterwards, when we're having cocktails, I'd go to pockets of retail and go, "It's nothing like that. It's nothing like that."
But on paper, not to judge a book by its cover, but that's what a lot of people were doing. On paper, you go, what is this? Speedball?
Yes, yeah, and you're right. Yes, Ant-Man could do more than just throw a sewing hook to the edge of the table.
Yes, he could.
And once again, depending on the writer.
Well, I love
hit his wife, and it turns into a bastardization of the character forever.
That's exactly. Or the Scott Lang
did it too. We're going into a rabbit hole of a character that has a long history of making really questionable choices.
Nice friend all the way at the back with the glove who has incredible arm strength.
Who do you think is the better
I get it. Yeah, it's execution, but I will tell you this. I mean, watch here. I'm going to answer your question without answering your question. Watch this. I'm a professional. Back before New 52, right before New 52, I did a run on Justice Society of America, and every time I write a comic book, particularly an ongoing, I'll come up with like some sort of rule for myself to like. This will be like the rule that gives the book identity in my mind, at least. And for Justice Society, I'm like, I'm going to write this like a Marvel book. And it was like, and I don't mean this in a qualitative way, it was like trying to drive a Ferrari as though it were a tractor. It handled differently. The universe handles differently, which is not to say better or worse. It's just, I felt at a visceral, creative level the differences between DC and Marvel, and so you can't just take DC characters and write them in a Marvel way, just the same way you can't take Marvel characters and write them in a DC way. So how's that for not answering your question? Are you doing a good job? He seems unimpressed.
The baby at the back who had opinions. What's the baby's name? Hi. Ooh, favorite Marvel and DC shows.
Well, my wife showran Agent Carter, so I am compelled to say favorite Marvel show Agent Carter. Thank you very much. Please. And my favorite DC shows, I don't feel qualified to answer that question.
Fabian.
My favorite Marvel show, that's a good one. I guess now in hindsight, it's probably WandaVision. My favorite DC show, ultimately, is probably Smallville. The reason for that is because I'm more emotionally attached to Superman than I am to Green Arrow or Flash, and I got really mad at his shows by the 4th or 5th season when there were just 200 supporting characters and taking time away from I want to see the Flash. But the universe Mark built with as many shows as he had, it's almost impossible
This is a good recovery, folks.
It's the recovery. No, but it's the truth because what he managed to do with his people is almost unheard of in television, all right? And there's a reason why it happened because what they were doing was good and people liked it. Right, I don't like 100 supporting characters in my Green Arrow and Flash shows, but I totally understand why there are 100 supporting characters in 22 episode orders. You know what I mean?
That's exactly it.
So I get it. But I love Smallville. I know it jumped through a lot of hoops, and I know it did some goofy things, but there's something about the innocence of a young Clark Kent trying to figure out that I really ended up enjoying a lot.
Can I tell a story that speaks to that?
Yeah.
So Arrow came on the same network after Smallville, and we basically had the exact same executives who would give us notes on every single goddamn episode. Right? And they kept giving the note, like, what has Oliver learned this week? And it was really exhausting. And it took me a while to sort of realize what was going on. I'm like, you're noting this as if it was Smallville. And the problem is that when Clark is in high school, he can learn something every week. The problem is Oliver Queen is like a 30-something-year-old man. If he's learning something every week, he's a schmuck. so it basically, it turned into like, well, how was Oliver different at the end of this episode than he was at the beginning? And this, by the way, it's like you can do that. It's hard to do that 23 times.
Yeah, I'm supposed to how many of us are different 22 times in a year from how we were the day before?
So the penultimate episode of season 1 of Arrow, Arrow is knocked out by the big bad.
Spoiler!
Yeah, right. 10-year-old, 12-year-old spoiler. He's knocked out by the end of, by the end of the episode by the big bad of the year, Malcolm Merlin. And the executive calls me up and he's like, I only have one note. I'm like, only one note, thank God. He's like, it's really more of a question. I'm like, oh, that's even better. He's like, just how is Oliver different at the end of this episode? And you know where I'm going here.
Yes.
So it's been a long season and I have, as Jerry Maguire said, lost the capacity for bullshit. And I just said, well, at the beginning of the episode, he's conscious. And the executive who was also tired is like, that's good enough. Thank God.
Well, like I say, nice friend in the jumpsuit.
Oh.
I'm Scotty. I'm Team DC as far as comics go. And
not the qualifier.
But Agent Carter as far as
I will die bitter about that show getting canceled.
Same.
My wife will die bitter too.
And it was like the highlight of my con. But anyway, moving on. Which do you think has the more compelling villains, Marvel or DC?
Who has better villains?
I think Marvel might, but it feels like
all the Joker heads.
It feels like the scales are gonna.
I'm a fan of the Gotham City Sirens.
It does feel to me like the scales are gonna be pretty evenly balanced.
Yeah.
But I think Marvel probably has the stronger villains because, again, the DC's foundations, and I always go back to that. DC's foundations are in the 50s and 60s, so your villain can only go so far. Lex Luthor is not going to kill and torture someone. He's, gonna be spoiled, be beaten by Lois's hard biscuits that she baked on. So it's a different dynamic for them foundationally. you know?
Right,
And Marvel's villains kind of started as being kind of cruddy, nasty people, you know, who all were screwed up for one reason or another, and it was always a mirror reflection of how screwed up the heroes were, which was interesting too, you know. So probably Marvel, but for me, just by a hair, I think DC's got phenomenally good villains.
Oh yeah, I will say, like, you know, we haven't talked enough about, you know, but the fact that DC characters were invented in like the 30s and 40s and 50s versus Marvel, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, like they're different. There's a different frisson of creativity. Like the DC characters are very much rooted in those original origins, and to the point where, like, you know, when you're trying to adapt them for live action, you know, like I worked on a critically acclaimed. I worked on a critically acclaimed movie, you know, Academy Award nominated movie, about a character who he could make things with a ring that was green, and his weakness was yellow. I mean, these were concepts that don't age particularly well for modern audiences. But obviously we pulled it off, and, you know, an Oscar nomination to show for it, and everyone beloved.
And it's an honor to be nominated.
It's absolutely an honor, absolutely.
But hey, the first guy's weakness was wood, so yellow is a step up from wood.
That is very, 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 very true. You're
And
right.
if anyone thought that the Lois Lane's biscuit thing was a joke, that's a real Golden Age cover, so you have some Googling to do if you're not familiar with it. Friend with sunglasses.
I don't explain the references well.
Hi, I'm Adam. I'm undecided, that's why.
Fair.
Good call, Adam. Yay.
So, one of the most infamous things about comics is they constantly resurrect people, no one can stay dead. So, whoever gets revived,
Oh, I like
one
this.
character from your universe, who would it be?
What character are you killing from your universe forever and ever, amen?
Don't say like, I don't know.
This is between us and the internet. No, you can't quantify, don't say.
In Marvel, I started at Marvel Comics in 1985. The basic rule, and it was a rule, is 3 characters are dead. Uncle Ben, Captain Marvel, and Bucky. And I think all 3 of them have probably been revived 50 times.
No, actually, I would say only 1 out of 3. Only Bucket. Ben's still dead.
But then they do stories where there's a live Ben, but it's a fake Ben.
Yeah, he's alive.
Yeah,
So I mean, they could do that.
Like,
I don't care if it's the real Gary or not. They brought. I don't even know if the real Marvel that they brought back was Jim Starlin as Captain Marvel. I'm not even sure.
No, I think he's still dead.
And
You know,
of course
he's
they
still
brought
dead.
Bucky back. So
And Gwen Stacy.
all 3 of those should have stayed dead. And yeah, but they brought Gwen Stacy back within a year of her getting killed.
I will say for DC, Martha and Thomas Wayne.
Ooh. I want to say Storm, but I know you're not Storm. I know you are from Husband Hotel. Nice lady in the white wig who looks around very confused because I got her cosplay wrong.
Cult of Lamb.
You called her Star.
I said I got it wrong.
I am on both because
Correct.
Marvel has like really good movies, really bad TV shows, and then DC's like the complete opposite. And I'm so sorry, but I guess my question is, if you have to rewrite any like Marvel or DC property, what would you pick?
Rewrite.
I'm sorry, but we had to rewrite any Marvel or DC what? Book?
Property.
Oh.
Just like anything, you could like be the comic one, I just say like in general.
If you were an editor, what would you fix?
But in live action or in comics? Oh, I mean, I would love to go back and fix Green Lantern. I always tell people, thank you. I always tell people a very simple Google search will surface our original draft. So, in case you're curious of what should and could have been, Green Lantern, screenplay, PDF, have fun.
And then come back next year and we'll
My
talk about
answer
it.
is also Green Lantern. I'd make them like subjective to yellow wood. If you happen to have yellow wood, you got them all covered.
That was not in our draft.
Static.
I'm on Team DC today. My question is, what would be your dream crossover?
Ooh, dream crossover within their own universe or with the other universe? Any crossover. Who wants to crossover with the boys?
I am desperate to write a Star Trek Star Wars crossover. I need Hikaru Sulu piloting the Millennium Falcon.
Dear Disney and Paramount executives.
Yes. We are one corporate merger and DOJ approval away from my dream coming true.
The Star Wars versus Star Trek idea. You can be both.
That's right.
So the first game, Kevin Bacon. How many different angles can we take to get the corporate merger to work?
It's just a matter of time before we're all working for Omnicorp. Let's be honest. We used to have antitrust laws in this country, ladies and gentlemen.
Mine would be Power Pack and Sugar and Spike. That would be it, because I think I'd have a whole lot of fun with that one.
Pink gloves.
So I guess DC because of the characters. It's a similar thing where it's like, the content Marvel is great content.
We're all
DC
live
is a
here.
special place in my heart, especially Static over there. Anyway, my question is, so you had mentioned earlier that you felt Spider-Man was more Marvel than DC, which surprised me a little because I felt like DC is very much about secret identities, and Marvel is very much not about that.
Marvel was very much about that forever until the movies came out.
Okay.
So let's separate the movies that you may have seen versus, and the reason there's no secret identities in the movies is because you got to see the actor's face. That's all there is to it.
Okay.
They want you, the actors want you to see their faces, the audience wants to see their face, and that's why. The Domino mask just doesn't look as good on Green Arrow on TV as Stephen Amell's face looks, So Marvel actually had a pretty good balance between characters who had secret identities and characters whose identities were publicly known for a variety of reasons, which I thought was always an interesting avenue to the storyline. So there is that difference.
Well, you answered my question.
Well, on that note, friends, that was our final question. Again, if you're mad, my name is Ashley. You can say it was mean on the post-show survey. That's fine. But to not break everybody's heart, we are going to get all together very calmly and very politely and take a selfie. But before we do that, Marc and Fabian, where can people come find you in these final hours of New York, unless you don't want them to find you?
I am in the back left corner of Artist Alley, where I usually am. Only NYCC puts Fabi in a corner, and that's why back left corner of Artist Alley.
You remind me of like the movie A Civil Action. I'll find you in the back left corner of heaven.
That's where I am. It is a little bit of heaven, Artist Alley.
Yes, I'm at the very, very end of aisle F in Artist Alley.
Okay, now let's all very friendly and politely help your short friends, help your ADA friends come to the middle, and we're gonna take a selfie.